So, congratulations, first of all, to the Academy and to the Rockefeller Foundation for organising such an important meeting. I'm very honoured to be here. I want to talk today about the importance of tackling food loss and waste. I want to talk a bit about what works in making a difference, particularly around data and measurement, and then talk about some of the priorities for achieving Sustainable Development Goal 12.3. If you don't know about RAP already, we're a non-profit. We're around helping people and planet thrive by creating a world in which resources are used sustainably. And food is probably the most important thing we work on. We're working in about 20 countries around the world now. Now, it feels like a watershed moment to me at the moment. We're seeing protests around the world, public awareness as high as ever about climate change. All of our people, particularly our young people, want to know what they can do about it. But I don't think they realise how important food is. A lot of talk about not flying, but this understanding that food waste, food loss and waste is 8% of greenhouse gas emissions, which is a huge number. It's actually 6 times aviation emissions. And I think that's the message we need to get people to understand, that if you want to tackle climate change, you have to stop wasting food. But it's not just climate change. It's using, as someone said earlier, agricultural land the size of China to produce the food that we then throw away. A quarter of all water is lost in that way. Probably around 60% of biodiversity loss is due to food production. And if we're doing that for nothing, that's of no use. But then, with 1 billion people going hungry while 2 billion eat too much, and 2 more billion mouths to feed by 2050, it really is a huge priority. And really the message should be, stop food waste. This is what we want them to be protesting about. To get more specific though, in the UK, we're wasting 10 million tonnes of food, and we're working in Mexico as well, which is wasting 20 million tonnes of food. And to understand the scale of that, if you think of St. Peter's Square behind us, or in front of us, the side of us, 1 million tonnes of food waste would fill that square piled up to the height of the Basilica. So we'd fill that 10 times for the UK, 20 times for Mexico. It's a huge, huge challenge. It's £20 billion worth of food waste in the UK, and it's $25 billion worth in Mexico, 2% of their GDP. Same time with 24 million people in food insecurity. It really is a challenge. We are working with partners to do that. The call for action should be clear, but the challenge is that people don't really see the true cost of food waste. They see the visible cost of throwing it away, but not all the costs of the lost materials, the lost energy, the lost labour, the lost water, the lost love in producing all that food. It's probably 10 times the cost they see. Our work with WRI has shown that the return on investment is, the medium is 14 to 1, and that's having looked at 700 businesses, 1,200 sites, 17 countries. So the business's case is strong. So what can we do about it? Well, the answer is working together, collective action to fight food waste by targeting, measuring and acting, which is what others have said too. Now, if we can have a roadmap in every country around the world to target, measure, act, to set the target, to measure, understand where food waste is and take action to change it, we can make a difference. Now, in the UK, we've been doing that through the Courtauld Commitment since 2007. And that has 150 businesses and organisations involved in it. And together, they put 90% of the food on the UK's table. So if they change, the whole system changes. And it's about system change. In Mexico, we're just starting, and we've launched the Comprometido con la Comida. I don't know if my pronunciation is very good, probably not. But that is the same thing. We're working with Walmart, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, Partnership with Global Goals, and Roddenberry Foundation to drive change in Mexico. And it's crucially important. It's going to give us lots of data, because when we have the data, we can then understand what to do. We're putting the data into something called a Food Waste Atlas, which is publicly available to everybody, so you can see the difference it makes. And I'd urge all to ask me about that afterwards and understand how you can put your data into it and to access it. It's systems though, and I want to tell you a story about potatoes and how we look at the hotspots in the potato chain. Now this is the story of 100 potatoes making their way to a restaurant, a kitchen in a hotel or a restaurant. It started, and these are the numbers of those 100 potatoes lost at each stage. So around 10% of the potatoes are lost before they leave the farm through grading and so on and disease. Another 20% are lost in storage and transport before they get to the kitchen of the hotel. And then in the hotel itself, in the kitchen, 30% are lost, which means that 40% of the potatoes, so 40 of those 100, make it to the plate, which is pretty bad to start with, but then only 25 are eaten. So each stage we have losses and waste, and it's about changing design specs, making the ovens the right temperatures, understanding the storage, changing skin-on potato wedges, for instance, to change things. If we understand that system, we can make change. And I said that of the 40 that made it, 15 were thrown away by the citizens at the end. And that's the other most important place to act. How do we get citizens to change how they think? And I heard from Yolanda about ideas on the table in Sweden, which sounds great. But we've been running the Love Food Hate Waste campaign since 2007. And this is about understanding who wastes food, how they waste food, why they waste food, what food they waste, using that research to come up with interventions to change the behaviours and to change the attitudes. We've reduced food waste since 2007 by 23% in the UK. That's actually 25 million tonnes of food. So 25 St Peter's Squares full we've saved, worth £20 billion. We'll be reporting our next data on the UK after Christmas in the new year. And I'm hoping to report some very good figures about further change in the UK. And if I put it all together in the UK, so far, cumulatively, we've saved around £25 billion through this work. So the financial benefits are huge of this. And these are costs that would have been borne by governments, businesses, and most importantly, people, saving people money. And that's really our opportunity to show that how integrating food loss and waste policies into the strategies of really all governments, but if we get all G20 governments to start by doing it, it would drive change. Accelerating the uptake of public-private partnerships like the Courtauld Commitment. Across the world, sharing best practice, sharing data, driving change, and then working together on helping citizens to change how they behave, then that would make the sorts of differences that we need. So it's about working together, building a coalition of the willing, finding, and most importantly, funding. We could do much more than we do now if we could mobilise the funding, and that's something I hope will come out in the action plan today. How do we fund some of this important work around the world? Because we need to accelerate action now, because we have a climate crisis, we have food insecurity, and economic crisis because of this. We all really need to unite in the food waste fight, and that is our mantra as RAP. So thank you very much.